Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time of day it is where you're at. Welcome to Collider Dailies. I'm John Aljets, and I'm joined by Perri. How you doing, Perri?
I'm doing well. It's Monday. Yeah, it's Monday.
Yeah, is it? The days are blurring together for me. I guess I should remember that it's Monday because it's the first dailies of the week. So,
That is true. That is
naturally.
true.
Hello, Steve. How you
Yes. Good
doing?
morning, Steve. Good to see you. And Mike, happy Monday to you too, friend.
Good to have all you guys joining us here. Today we are talking about Strangers Chapter 1 has a trailer, and also we've got some other like little tidbits we're going to be discussing about that. But first, we're going to be diving in with the box office recap. Let me pull up the graphic here for that. Hey, we're going to be looking at the box office for the weekend, which, I mean, honestly, it's dominated by one picture, and really that's it, and that would be Dune Part 2.
Oh, yeah.
Dune Part 2 pulled in a domestic gross of $81.5 million at the box office, which puts it, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that ties it with Oppenheimer's opening weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Or at least gets it dang close to Oppenheimer's last year. But it also puts it very comfortably in the top spot for the year so far. Internationally, it pulled in 97 million, bringing our total to 178.5 million. Perri, does this surprise you in the slightest?
Not really. No, I think we were seeing signs of this leading up to release for a little while now. Not that Dune, as in like Dune Chapter 1's Dune Part 1. Now I'm reversing the title format because we're talking about Strangers Chapter 1 and Dune Part 2. Anyway, not that the first Dune movie was the best indicator, just because the box office wasn't quite where it is now, and they had the dual release and all that because of COVID type stuff. But I did feel like when early reactions hit and they were so impossibly glowing that we were in for a biggie. And given how this year has gone thus far, I was kind of getting the sense that, movie lovers wanted a good one, wanted like a really good movie to celebrate in theaters, to experience in a communal capacity, to see on the biggest screen possible. It just felt like all the stars were aligning for Dune 2, and I'm glad to see a really good movie make the money that it deserves, which things don't always line up that way. So I'm very, very happy to see Denis Villeneuve in particular have a box office hit on his hands.
And to put it into context compared to the first Dune's total gross pulled in 433.7 million roughly over its total run. So that's, we're already at like a quarter of that. That's pretty impressive. And I definitely think I think a part of it is the fact that after Dune, the part 1, right? Yeah, part 1, not chapter 1. Part 1 left theaters. It kind of like it seemed to have had a little bit more of a home release success than anything. A lot of word of mouth, a lot of people talking about how great that movie was, and also there was the dual release because it was also streaming. And so a lot of people showed up for Dune Part 2 that might not have been drawn to Dune as a franchise, because that is like a pretty sci-fi nerd heavy franchise. But, a lot of people are showing up, and a lot of people seem to be really enjoying Dune Part 2, which I'm super stoked on, being a huge fan of the series, of the books, and all of that. Looking at the rest of the box office, though, our numbers are significantly lower. Number 2 for the weekend was Bob Marley One Love on its third week at $7.4 million. Ordinary Angels was number 3 on its second week at $3.85 million. Madam Web in its third week was at 3.2 million, and Migration on its 11th week was still pulling in 2.5 million, which is pretty impressive for a 11th week run. These are all domestic numbers, by the way. Yeah, I mean, Yeah, Dune 2 just absolutely dominated it. There was
Yeah.
nothing even remotely
I
close.
think Dune 2 is doing really well for a multitude of reasons. One, the fact that the movie's really good. One, the fact that Dune 2 is really good. The fact that Dune 1 was really good. I think it had a pretty solid foundation there. And also, I was talking about this recently with someone. The the star power in that movie is really something else. You look at
Oh,
Austin
yeah.
Butler, Zendaya, Florence Pugh, Timothy Chalamet. That movie has some of the biggest rising stars, and I think those stars have fan bases that are going to make people prioritize that movie, whether they are a big Dune fan or not. So I think that works in the movie's favor. Another really cool thing to keep in mind with how well Dune 2 did right out the gate is it looks like it's going to have legs. Next week, there is really big competition in Kung Fu Panda 4. That franchise
Yeah.
does perform really well. I'm excited for people to see the new movie. I have a feeling that there's a lot of families out there looking for like solid 4 quadrant movies. So I have a feeling that's going to win next weekend. But expectations are pointing towards Dune 2 having legs. And while we do love celebrating a strong opening weekend at the box office, really a movie having legs, I think, is one of the most important things. And it's looking like Dune 2 will. And then on top of that, it's already kicked off Oscar buzz for the season. Like we haven't even had this year's Oscars, but folks are already pointing at Dune
Yeah.
2 as a potential contender for next year. And I do think it could pop up in a number of categories. The big one for me is Greg Fraser has to get another nomination for Dune Part 2. His work is
Oh,
truly
yeah. Absolutely
mind-blowing.
stellar. Did a fantastic job. Now, the question that I have 2 questions here for you based off of what you just said there. Talking about Dune 2 having legs, do you think it's going to cross the 1 billion mark?
No.
Really?
I don't think it'll cross 1 billion. Oppenheimer didn't even cross 1 billion.
Damn close.
That's a pretty high number to hit there, but I mean that's not to say I don't think it's going to do well and go on to make a significant amount and likely be one of the bigger earners of the year. So I don't think it's going to make a billion, but I do think it's going to do very well in total.
I think it could feasibly hit a billion. Like it's not outside the realm of possibility that it could. But I think that we're going to need to see exactly how much legs it has in the next few weeks before we can really necessarily say that. The other question that I have is, and this is something that I saw some people on Twitter discussing, so I want to hear your take on it. How do you think that Dune 2 might have changed the landscape of this year's Oscars if it had been released when it was supposed to have been released originally?
I think it would have been in the mix. I think it
Do you,
would.
do you think that do you think that things would be as dominated by Oppenheimer still?
There's a bug on my wall and it's stressing me out. I literally, as I was thinking and just looked up, there it is. And it's just going to hang out there until we're done. So hopefully it doesn't come and attack me live on the show. Um, it's always difficult to process a question like that because there are so many factors. It's like,
Oh, no.
one, do I consider Dune Part 2, let's say, a Best Picture contender among the group that has been nominated? And I'd probably say yes there. The other thing that I'm thinking about is I do think that in terms of box office and debuting in a way that inspires the world to go like, wow, and pay lots of attention to this thing, I feel like it might be better suited with where it landed at the beginning of March versus when it was originally scheduled to be released. It's like it has the spotlight big time right now. And again, we're talking about it having legs. So I do think it's in a position where it could go all the way. I can't with certainty say it would have done the same in a more crowded landscape. I forget what the specific original release date was and what it would have been up against, but things are looking pretty
November?
good for it the way all that's structured right now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is definitely hard to tell how it would necessarily do. I definitely do think that if it had released last year, it would be in the best picture race. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Best director might be in there, best cinematography would be in there. It's hard for me to necessarily say if any of the actors would be getting best actor or best actress. Hard to say, but I think it would definitely be in there in the mix. All in the Game, getting back to the box office discussion, says Uh, Dune 2, or oop, that was not the right one of his. I lost it. How did I lose it?
What was it
Oh,
about?
here it is. I accidentally scrolled. Dune 2 is not 4-quadrant enough to cross 1 billion. Uh, I think I could probably get behind that, but at the same time, it seems to be pulling in audiences that I wouldn't have expect to be going to Dune. So
My question would be, do you call Joker 4-quadrant enough to cross 1 billion? That's not a 4-quadrant movie. That made $1
true,
billion.
yeah.
Oppenheimer is not 4-quadrant, and it came pretty damn close to making $1 billion. So
This
I
is
don't
true.
know if that's a $1 billion killer right there.
No. And then this is a little bit off topic, but I do want to address this because he did just recently comment on this. The Matrix says Villeneuve should do Blade Runner 3. So he actually just recently in an interview commented that the fact that he did 2049 keeps him up at night, and he wants to avoid working on other people's IP in the future. So as much as I would love to see that, because Blade Runner 2049 is probably top 5 favorite films of the last like decade for me. I don't foresee that happening if we ever even do get a third Blade Runner. Perri, what are your thoughts on that? Would you like to see, first of all, would you like to see a third Blade Runner? And if so, would you like to see him take it on?
I just genuinely want to see him make whatever movie he is most passionate about making next. I feel like that's a determining factor in terms of my enthusiasm for any ongoing franchise.
That's totally fair. I think that's a good way to look at it. All right, moving on to our second topic of today, our second part chapter thing. Strangers, chapter
Chapter.
1. So The Strangers chapter 1 got a trailer. It actually was leaked a little bit earlier than they intended for it to be released, so it wound up getting pushed out little bit early, but you know, these things sadly happen. I don't know how they happen. They just keep
Links are
happening.
bad. I know this wouldn't make any difference, but I just wish that, someone who is about to push publish on something that they know they would be leaking, that is being released before intended, would just stop and think about all the people that would be impacted by doing that. All of the people who work on these campaigns, the folks involved in the making of the movie, the folks that were supposed to attend that Emerald City Comic-Con panel and have the opportunity to be the first to see the trailer. Think about how many people that impacted, and just be a human being and don't do it. Makes me mad.
It is certainly a bummer when these sort of things happen. I'm never thrilled to get a trailer leak. Like, I know some people are like, oh yeah, we got to see it early. I'm never happy about it, but still it's out there. I did watch it, and I gotta say, I dig the vibe of this movie. I loved the original Strangers. Wasn't the biggest fan of Prey at Night. I felt like it felt too much like a generic slasher to me.
Hmm.
But this one feels very much in the vein of that first film, and I'm all on board with it. Perri, what are your thoughts on the trailer?
I mean, The Strangers, the 2008 movie, is a classic. I think
Oh, yeah.
that premise is brilliantly simple. And I know in a lot of cases we get nervous when you have such an iconic horror movie. Like, why would you do another one? It's so good. Just leave it alone. That concept, though, is so incredibly smart that it
Yeah.
does feel like it's worth tapping into more. As for Prey at Night, I was just having this conversation with my buddy Matt. I really, really like sequences of that movie. The whole, I don't necessarily know if that's a way to continue the story in a manner that intrigued me enough. So I don't know if I liked the movie as a whole, but I do really like certain sequences. In particular, the pool sequence, I think, is just absolutely epic.
Yeah.
Beautifully lit, beautifully shot, all that good stuff. This one really excites me. I had an opportunity to do an interview for it at New York Comic-Con back in the fall, and a lot of the stuff that producer Courtney Solomon and director Renny Harlin said about it sparked more intrigue. I'm always going to be invested in another Strangers thing just because I like the story and I like the brand. But the idea of them receiving a 280-page script and deciding that they had to make it into a 3-film series sparks interest. And then Madeleine Petsch's involvement sparks interest as well. Like, especially the fact that she was so passionate about the character and the story that, you know, she worked on it and contributed to it enough to earn an executive producer credit. I don't know. I trust her instincts, and I feel like that bodes well for the quality of chapter 1 and also 2 and 3 as well.
I will say I am very curious to see how they are managing to have enough material to do 280 pages, because oftentimes I don't know, I feel like there's going to need to be a lot more lore.
Oh
Otherwise,
yeah.
just to avoid 2 and 3 feeling samey.
Well, the trailer itself teased what that's going to be. I think the trailer said, I don't know if I'm getting the specific words right, but like in May, like see what I feel like I wrote it down somewhere. Let me just like say it properly before I say the wrong thing. It was
See how
in
the strangers became
yeah.
strangers or whatever.
This
Yeah.
May, witness how the strangers became the strangers. And I'll give you two sides of that, John. On the one hand, that makes me nervous because part of the reason why that first film is so scary is because there is no reason.
Yeah.
They did that because you were home, or in this case, because you were here. That makes me nervous. But on the other hand, it's kind of disturbingly fascinating to hear why people would just do something like that because innocent people were home or here. So I feel like it could work. And that's what warrants the 280.
And it does definitely seem like the town is going to play a part in it, because just based off that trailer, the town seemed to be giving off vibes like they kind of were in on it, or at least knew what was going on, or there's something shifty going on with the town. So there's probably going to be a lot in there. And I do know that in an interview that you did, they were talking about some of the thoughts that they were having about the original Strangers versus kind of what they're doing with this one. And I believe it was the producer, or no, it was Petsch herself was talking about how the first film, you didn't really get a lot of time to care about Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman. And this one, you're getting those characters fleshed out a little bit more. So maybe that's what's going to be taking up more time, is just more time spent with the characters.
Well, I do think her character in particular is going to be a centerpiece of these three films. And I think she's going to get a lot of development, especially given what I said earlier about how heavily involved she's in. There's some folks in the chat, Steve in particular, is asking, is it smart to release all three chapters of the Strangers movies in 2024? We don't have a release date for any except for chapter 1. So we don't know if that's what they're doing, but I know they have said that the goal is to release them fairly close together. And like, I, for one, love that. I think everybody out there knows how strongly I feel about the Fear Street movies. And I think that release model worked really, really well for a film franchise that had three distinct parts to it. So I mean, I don't think they're going to release these Strangers movies 1 week apart, but having them come out so close together, that could be really cool, especially given the fact that I know they filmed them back to back to back.
Yeah.
Like, they filmed them together. I don't know the status of how far along chapters 2 and 3 are in terms of being done, but they got the footage. They could release them close together.
I do remember at New York Comic Con, I didn't conduct the interview, but I sat in filming an interview for CBR with Renny Harlin. And I do remember him saying that he wanted to release them as close as possible together. But I feel like there's probably like marketing reasons why you wouldn't want to release them like basically one on top of each other. So there will be a few months separation at least, is what I would predict.
To everything is entertainment's question. The Fear Street movies actually all released 1 week apart. It was the summer of 2021. I believe it started the first week of July, and they did 1994, 1978, and then the last one capped it off the next week. So it was like 1, 2, 3, and it was great. It turned it into an event. And like, again, this goes back to what we were talking about with Dune. I understand that kind of event feeling, might not be able to be replicated today, because when those movies came out, it was, the tail end of lockdown, and it still felt like we needed something to share at home. And I think it might be a little different with this particular set of films, but I don't know. I'm kind of hoping they make it the year of the strangers.
I'd be all for it. But with that all being said, we kind of do have to wrap up the show just a little bit here. Because this discussion turned out to be longer than I anticipated. So I do want to do one last question from the comments. Mike Joyce here asked, the woman seated next to me yesterday made her partner get up and get popcorn soda refills 5 times. What's the most you've ever seen someone leave their seat?
Absolutely not.
That is unacceptable.
John, this is too much information. I will not get up a single time during a movie.
No.
I am especially lame. Folks always ask me, what's your favorite movie snack? No snacks. One, because eating movie snacks will distract me from what's on the screen. I'm so intense about this. It's very embarrassing. But then on top of that, I won't drink anything because I don't want to run the risk to have to get up and go to the bathroom even. No. And also, if I ever went to a movie with someone, I would never ask that person to miss some of the movie to get me something.
The only time that something like that I feel is at all acceptable is if you are the only people in the theater and it's a movie that either you or your partner have seen already. In which case, at that point, maybe it's okay. But even then, just don't do it. Just sit back, enjoy the movie. You can eat popcorn and drink soda and stuff later. Just watch the movie. Although
I don't want to make anyone feel bad if they enjoy food and drink, because that's part of the movie experience. This is just how I operate.
That's a little extreme to me. I at least always have a soda and something to snack on. Although the snack is usually gone before the movie even starts. Anyways, that is where we are going to end things today. So with that, Perri, do you have anything coming down the pipeline that you want to plug?
I do. And it's Collider Dailies tomorrow. In fact, I have a guest on the show that is not only a super talented filmmaker, but one of my best friends in the world. A lot of you know Erlinger. He's been on this YouTube channel before, and he's got a new movie coming out on March 8th called The Piper. So he will be on this channel with me. We are going to talk about 2 things. We're going to actually split the show between talking about his movie, which is a really cool movie, an ambitious topic. I love how, given the title, The Piper, you could probably imagine this. I love how they incorporate music, and it's a really beautiful score in the movie. I can't wait to talk about that. But then after, he's going to join me for a little news discussion too, and we're going to talk about the latest update on Jason Blum's dreamed Friday the 13th movie. Jason Blum wants to make a new one, and he recently told me a little something about his hopes for that movie. So we're going to talk about that as well. So tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Pacific, I will see you with Erlinger right here on this YouTube channel.
Yeah, be sure to tune in for that. But until that episode is ready to rock for you guys, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your evening. Go see Dune if you haven't already. But as I said, until tomorrow, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.